Hi everyone, and welcome at my session where I'm going to talk about how to implement a responsible AI strategy within your organization. Now, to introduce myself, hey everyone, my name is Sammy Deprez. I'm based in Belgium. I'm a Microsoft AI MVP for 3 years now on a row. I'm the head of technology at Arinti, which is a firm, a consultancy firm focused on data and AI. And maybe you've seen me already in some videos also of the global AI community. And a little fun fact, I'm a big Lego fan. Well, enough about myself. First of all, I also want to excuse myself that I cannot be at this event live because of some time issues. I'm doing this via a recorded video. But no worries, I will share my details in the last slide so you can still ask me questions if you have any. So let's go into the presentation and let's talk about what to accomplish with responsible AI. Now, we see that the term responsible AI is, let's say, relative new. A couple of years ago, people were not really discussing so much about it. But there's also some other terms that people are using. Trustworthy AI, ethical AI. But yet, responsible AI is emerging as somehow an umbrella term to make the right business and ethical choices when adopting AI that organizations are addressing. So responsible AI includes actually many different activities, and what you see here now on the screen are just the top ones. We have value and trust, we have fairness and explainability, and of course accountability and compliance. What people sometimes forget is actually the value, because it's like a seesaw. Sometimes it shifts towards the value and sometimes it shifts towards command and control in terms of doing things responsible and forgetting the value, which is still very important. So the idea of an AI strategy is to balance dynamically the value and other responsible AI activities. But we have some little issues. We have, and that's actually what we're going to discuss, we need to know what the dimensions are of responsible AI, and also linked to that, what are the key practices that we can look at. And that's what we're going to discuss in the next minutes. So let's start with the dimensions. Now, we all know to actually even start an AI project, well, what you will need is an AI expert. But the big question is do we have enough with that? Well, sometimes we might hear from organizations that they've already have an AI expert that is already doing or building responsible AI. Well, I'm already gonna pop your bubble here. Just having an AI expert, although it's very important in your AI team, it's not enough. There's many different participants of an AI team. Let's have a look at that. As you see here, there are many dimensions to responsible AI that are necessary to consider outside the view of a data scientist or an AI expert. I will discuss today these 4 different dimensions. I will not talk specifically about data scientists, but just as I say, it takes a village to bring up a child. Well, it's the same for responsible AI. It takes a village to deliver responsible AI. So you will see that we need different kinds of profiles. Now, responsible AI is also the art of resolving dilemmas. AI itself, the problem with this is it's not probabilistic. AI itself is algorithmic and predictive, and therefore there are always questions that you need to ask. And it's hard to tell in advance where the pitfalls, and AI is also in such a stage of existence that tools are evolving. Understanding is evolving, and generally the theme of responsible AI and best practices are also evolving. Yet some dilemmas persist. For example, one of the dilemmas we are facing recently, already a couple of years of course, is concerning facial recognition. Now it seems like facial recognition might be very useful for finding photos back of your friends or your child on your phone. But when we look at it in a societal or organizational context, it becomes very challenging. We already hear from organizations that they took the decision to not make use of facial recognition for various reasons. And there are plenty of other examples. There are examples of bias, there's examples of risk, there's organizational responsibilities, as again balancing between value and risk. Now we want to mitigate the risk with responsible AI, but at the same time also deliver the value. What is also very important is employee reskilling, because AI is the first non-deterministic technology for most organizations. It means again that if AI is predictive and probabilistic, it is much harder for people to understand what it's doing. Now, if you look in the past, the weather forecast was a challenging thing for the society, but now it's not a question. Now, AI is a bit like the weather forecast, that where people need to build trust in it. Trust in the system is very and highly important. And trust comes with many different actions, and the best one is employee reskilling. Sometimes it's also referred as data literacy, and there are some best practices in terms of managing risk, about transparency, and about education. The next dimension is the customer dimension. It could be patients, students, citizens. Now, it is a very good conversation in organization to discuss who the customer is and who the customer of AI is. Now, for example, a software company might have a customer who is in a bank. Now, but eventually, if a bank uses the software to make certain decisions, the life of individuals can be impacted. Now, as individuals, we are sometimes okay with sharing some personal details if it helps us to get the right insurance or to connect to the group that shows the same interest as us. But we are very uncomfortable when AI starts impacting our life with decisions where we have little or no choice and we have no way to telling that we are unhappy with some automated algorithmic decisions about us, or when it can impact how we are being treated. Now, the job of responsible AI is to promote fairness. First of all, to be aware of fairness, to give a definition of what fairness means, and to make sure that they do whatever is possible to demonstrate to the customer or to the citizens that they are making steps. And it's not only just window dressing, it's a very considerable part of the strategy of how we deal with all those dilemmas and how do we make sure that we care about fairness towards the customer and ethics. Ethics might be very subtle. For example, an algorithm can easily detect a Western wedding, but they don't detect as easily weddings where bride and groom don't wear black and white, but might be just a party. Well, this could be offensive. And there are many more offensive practices, but this is just a very small one. The next dimension is society. Well, this is a very huge conversation that each organization needs to consider in deploying AI. Each society has its own value. Society cares about human rights, human dignity. The dilemma for delivering AI across a society is how to use AI to the maximum effectiveness of the society, like smart cities, and balance this with freedoms. How do you not cross the creepiness line? How do you leave citizens with their expected freedom and support those freedoms? It is challenging because different nations have different values and humanity on itself has a variety of viewing values. Now the key is to go beyond this, go beyond these principles. Now another huge point is regulatory compliance. And this is becoming even more challenging because there's an existing compliance that applies to AI. And then there are new regulations that are coming out about AI that needs to be kept on looked into. But then there's also a lot of questions that are very challenging in terms of social opinions, such as sustainability. These kind of questions come with training large-scale AI models. If you think about the GPT, the DALIs that we know already. AI models cause pollution. It takes a lot of energy and there's rising voices about sustainability of large-scale AI training on a regular basis. There's also an AI equality between the nations in terms of regulation. For example, some nations have very restricted healthcare data regulations, while some others don't. And that means that some algorithms do not apply equally across the globe. Or if an algorithm has been trained in the nation with a relaxed regulation, well, the algorithm might be dangerous in a nation with strict regulations. All of this is important to be aware and to be discussed when developing AI solutions. All these questions are the basis for responsible AI. Responsible AI is about resolving dilemmas and asking questions. The more questions that you're asking, the more an organization would be prepared to deal with those questions. Now, of course, people who are affected by AI the most are for those whose organization is developing. Employees that upon AI decisions are using AI as their support. The issue is control versus job efficiency. There are so many concerns about AI affecting jobs. People that are not exposed to AI are concerned about what will happen to their jobs. But surveys exposed that people who have been exposed to AI have a different perspective. But that does not eliminate the question of trust. Employees are the ones who AI depends in terms of adoption. If they do not trust the black box, they might not use it or they might sabotage it. So the question is how to develop an AI algorithm that employees understand and are comfortable to use. And it's not just a trigger, it's a mindset that needs to grow over time. Now, what you see here are a bunch of different use cases. And many organizations are already filtering out what use cases to implement. And they have organizational structures on implementing those use cases. Now, it's the same effort and the same data that is necessary for each use case. Now, employees or citizens are okay when AI is made to make them feel safer, but they are not okay when AI determines how much they need to get paid or if they can get a loan. Again, these are the kind of questions that needs to be raised. It is an end-to-end selection of the use cases all the way to the monitoring of AI in production and making sure that people have a way of giving you as an organization feedback to your AI solutions. Now, of course, the question arises, how do we start or how do we set up an organization for responsible AI? Well, what you see here is not a work chart. It's not, but this is how it looks at different organizations. It does not mean that every organization has everything. You have the group responsible for responsible AI, of course, and sometimes it extends data and analytics. Sometimes it extends legal and compliance, and sometimes it comes from the business. But this is the umbrella organization. Now, it should be enforced by AI governance and are sometimes overseen by an AI oversight committee. Now, then you also have AI validators who check if AI is doing what it's supposed to do, and they need to ask the questions. Another interesting group is the AI Empathy Lab, where data scientists have the chance to be in the customer's shoes or in the patient's shoes. How do you feel as a customer or patient when the AI is actually used on you yourself now as a data scientist? Now, I wanted to quickly share a case study by Gartner that will illustrate what companies do concerning responsible AI. Now, this case study is by Axon's Practices, who delivers body cams and license plate readers for law enforcement. And they started discussing about using AI in their equipment. But as an organization who sells products, they did not want to make these decisions alone. So they created an ethics board with people who could be affected by the use of it. Now, their customer is the police, but the consumers of those AI models is not the police, but it's the population. They shared with their ethics board in detail that what their plans were up, but also some company secrets to make sure that the consumers would understand what their product would do. Well, their accountability was being accountable to the public and to allow everyone to be involved or who is interested to reach out the ethics board. Now, this illustrated that organizations can have issues that they should not resolve themselves. They should create some organization that can help them out. Transparency and intention is a big thing, and of course, creating accountability. So, a recommendation for our first item, the issues of dilemmas on the different kinds of dimensions. Build an advisory AI board of independent, respected people to resolve AI dilemmas. But what are the key practices for responsible AI? How should you go about responsible AI within your own organizations? Let's have a look at the 5 most used practices. Now, the first one is concerning privacy. How do we protect the privacy of everyone who's consuming also models? How can you reap the benefit of AI while of course respecting the privacy of individuals? How can you do machine learning if you cannot use private sensitive data? And what are the practices then to deal with that tension, with that dilemma? Now, one of those strategies is called differential privacy, which is an approach to use the pattern that we can derive from a dataset without sharing anything that can be related to one individual in their dataset. Well, this is something that is used in online retail to identify groups of customers that share common interests in buying certain goods. Now, by keeping the groups big enough to never be able to relate this to the level of an individual. Another practice is homomorphic encryption, which is about encrypted data, but in such a way that the data is still usable for analysis. Now, this is, for example, applied in healthcare to share sensitive medical data in an encrypted format, but it still allows scientists to do medical research with that data. And then we see another growing area, and that's synthetic data, or as the name implies, data that is not real. It's not about real persons, instead it's data that is generated by running advanced simulations or by applying domain heuristics or even applying so-called generative AI. Techniques like generative adversarial networks, the same techniques that are used to generate fake media, for example. Now let's go to the second point, and that's detecting and mitigating bias. If left unchecked, bias may lead to AI systems that favor or disfavor groups of people on the color of their skin, their gender, their age, other characteristics that are directly or indirectly related to illegal and unwanted discrimination. Clearly, bias must be prevented, detected, and mitigated as much as possible. Now, one practice to do so is by introducing sufficient diversity, making sure that the data is representing the full variety of individuals and all their characteristics that are relevant to the analysis in question. Now, diversity is not only about the data, it's also about people, and in particular, the people in your AI team that are working together to develop and operate your AI solutions. By making sure that your AI team is diverse, you reduce the risk of grouping. You reduce the risk of the team applying unconscious or conscious bias and validating the models before they are deployed and put to use in production. Therefore, diversity is an important remedy to fight against bias. But there are more remedies to, like explainability and validation, which we will address in a second. But before we go there, we should note that of course there's no need to reinvent the wheel. There are many different fairness frameworks available by big data vendors to make sure their own AI projects are fair. Some of these frameworks are published as open source projects, and these can be reused by your data scientists in your organization. Now, most of these frameworks revolve increasingly used model cards. Basically, these are used to properly document AI models and keeping track of of information like what is the intended use of that model, what are certain metrics, what are the ethical considerations that were made, what training data was used, what evaluation data was used, and so on. But also we need to think about the data on itself. We can also document the data with, for example, data sheets, where again, we're going to motivate our data. What's the purpose of the data set? Who created it? Who funded it? Which is a very important one. Let's say you're doing some research on oil and your data was funded by a big oil company. Maybe not the best idea, depending on the use case, of course. But also concerning the composition of your data, how the data was collected, what pre-processing, cleaning or labeling was done, how I can use the data, and so on. So again, a very important part that you can use to be accountable and responsible of your AI models. Now, another key practice is, of course, explainability. An AI model should be able to explain why it came to a specific conclusion. For example, a system that is used to assist doctors in medical diagnosis should be able to explain which symptoms were the most important to conclude to that prediction. Likewise, in interpretation, we would like to understand which part of the picture was the most important and leading the system to conclude that the guitar or the dog or something else was in the picture. Now, offering this explainability is very useful in detecting bias, but it also helps in building trust and to validate the accuracy of AI systems. Now, when we talk about validation, which is our fourth key practice, we see that it's more and more common is a model validator that works independently from the model developers. And he validates the model for accuracy and fairness. Now, those validators even run trials to see if they can evoke bias by trying out methods the developers might have overseen. You could compare it to hiring a white hat hacker to see if they can penetrate your security safeguards. Now, only in this case it applies to bias or to see if privacy sensitive data may be revealed by reverse engineering the model. Now, the last key practice which is included is the need to extend your governance process with explicit attention for responsible AI. Maybe today you already have governance for compliance and risk management, or hopefully you already have data governance to improve the quality of your data. Now, extending those existing governance structures or variations to create an explicit AI governance is critical for responsible AI. And it should be based on key values like diversity, transparency, and trust. Moreover, an AI governance should have a solid ethical foundation, which may be unique to your organization, but I would recommend you to use existing policies or existing guidelines with respect to responsible AI as a starting point. For example, documents from the EU or even from Microsoft, but also some other organizations have shared their policies and guidelines publicly. An example of AI governance in practice comes from BNP Paribas, which is a European big bank. Now, this bank has been dedicated to what they call AI trust and risk management, while they govern and control their activities across the entire life cycle, that it goes from ideation and use case selection to all the way to operating and monitoring the AI systems that they have in production. Importantly, they've also recognized the criticality of raising awareness amongst their employees and other stakeholders, and having the talent with the right skills to apply AI in an effective but also responsible manner. Well, what recommendations can I give based on the key practices? First of all, you need to drive carefully. Just like driving, you need to have someone responsible for each use case. Have someone who is responsible, who is accountable for responsible AI development. The person will ask around, ask questions, involve the right people, making sure that the right data is selected. A second point is to always have a human in the loop who can override the decision or who can make a change that is not provided. And of course, choose wisely. Continuously raise awareness of the AI differences, because AI is again probabilistic and non-deterministic. Therefore, there are certain things that are hard to test or hard to foresee. There should be some mechanism of raising awareness on a regular basis, and that also increases the trust and defends their decision. Therefore, the role of the validator is very important. Now with that, I'm going to end my presentations. If you still have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me on my Twitter account @Sammy Deprez. Love to get any feedback about my session also. And for the rest of the day, I wish you all the best and a lot of learning on all the other interesting sessions that are being given here on Tech Days Pakistan. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you one day.